In this presentation, we'll discuss bank feeds as they relate to credit cards. We'll discuss connecting the bank, the credit card bank, the institution to QuickBooks Online and uploading the data from the credit card company into our bookkeeping system. Let's get into it with Intuit's QuickBooks Online. Here we are in our Get Great Guitars file. Let's first start off by opening up our reports. So I'm going to go to the reports on the left side. We're going to be opening up the balance sheet and the P&L, starting with the balance sheet. We'll change the dates up top. So going from 01/01/20 to 12/31/20. Then I'm going to run that report. Then I'm going to duplicate the tab up top by right-clicking on that tab up top and duplicating it. Next, we're going to go back to the left, back to the tab to the left. We're going to go back to the reports down below. Same process for the profit and loss, the P&L of the income statement. We'll open up that report. We're going to be changing the dates to the same date range up top, scrolling up top from 01/01/20 to 12/31/20. Going to run that report. Going to duplicate the tab up top, right-clicking on it, and we will duplicate it. And then I'm going to go back to the balance sheet on the right. Then I'm going to close the hamburger up. I'm going to hold down Control, scroll up just a bit, and we're going to be considering credit card information now. So credit card information, note if you look in the balance sheet, it's going to be stored in a kind of a special account. So it's a current liability account, but they have a special account for the credit cards. And the special account related to the credit cards, why it's not in with other current liability account type, is because the credit card account will allow you to track the credit card outstanding balance a little bit more easily and use other resources related to that account type, including the bank feed feature and reconciliation feature. So we already have one set up here for $1,000. Let's see how you would set one up from scratch if you needed to do so. We're going to go to the first tab over to the right. I'm going to hold down Control, scroll down just a bit, and we're back to 100% so that QuickBooks doesn't do anything funny as we navigate around this screen. And then we're going to go down and we're going to go to the accounting. We want to be on the first tab, that being the chart of accounts. Now, if you were to set up a credit card account, then you would want to go to new. I'm not actually going to set one up. I'm just going to show you how it would be done. You'd want to choose the account type, and the credit card account type is the one you want. And so then you can name the credit card account. You could name it just credit card. You probably want to name it by institution, possibly American Express, Visa, if you have multiple Visas or whatnot. Then possibly the bank, or even put some digits of the number in there so you can distinguish the credit cards that you are using. You may also want to set up a parent account called credit card, possibly, and then have multiple cards underneath it that will feed into that parent account if you so choose. So for example, in our case, we just set up one account once you save it under credit card. And we just have our one account. Now, if you have this little numbers or something by it to indicate which credit cards you're using, then you may want a parent account, but it may not be necessary as well, because note that if I go back to the balance sheet, it'll typically be housed under its own section, because the reports, I'm going to hold down Control, scroll back up, makes another little open and close section here that is going to be due to account type. So if you have multiple credit cards, you'll be able to condense them and run a balance sheet report that will have them basically condensed, a summarized balance sheet report into simply credit cards. So in our case, we've got this outstanding balance in the credit card as of the end of the last period, and then we're going to enter the charges for the current period. Now, what you'd want to do then is connect to the bank, and you'd have a similar process for connecting to the bank. So if you went to the first tab then, I'm going to hold down Control and scroll down a bit. And then I'm going to go up to the banking section. So I'm going to go to the banking section, and we already have bank feeds in here. So you see some of the items that are already included related to bank feeds. If we wanted to connect to the credit card institution, we can then go to add account. So we can go to add account up top, and then we can select our credit card. So if we are one of the major credit card companies, then typically, for example, American Express, or if your other credit card like a Visa is running through some institution that's a major institution, then typically you'll be able to find and connect to the American Express or other credit card in a similar fashion as you had done with the bank feed. Similar process. The actual connection for most large institutions will be fairly easy to go through that connection process. Now, if you have any problems, where the problems may lie are the same kind of problems with the bank feeds, in that you may want a situation where you want a certain amount of data when you first connect it. So you may want, for example, a whole year's worth of data. If you're trying to do tax information, you want a whole year. You may not be able to get a whole year of information as you do when you set up the bank feeds in this format, and therefore might need to go to the institution, as we showed with the banking information, and see if it is available to download that information in a QBO type file, which you can then upload, or in a CVS type file, or some other file that would be acceptable to QuickBooks in order to upload. So if the QBO would be the main file, if not the CVS file. And so that's what we're going to do here. We're going to practice that information, and then we'll be in the same kind of process with that data, just like with the bank feeds for the bank, that we'll then have to accept and then add into our system. So our credit card statement might look something like this. We're going to have the beginning balance. We're going to say this is the beginning balance. Then we made a payment of the $250, which would decrease the balance that was owed. Then we have new charges that are given down below in the detail, and that's going to be our ending balance. So we're going to say then, in other words, if we had our beginning balance in the old trusty calculator, and then we paid $250, and then we incurred another $500, that's getting to the $1,250. Here's the detail down below of what we paid and the charges that we have here. So if we were to get this information directly from the bank in terms of raw data, it might look something like this, where we're going to have the date, we're going to have the description, we're going to have the amount. Same kind of information in raw data. And I added some more here for May, just because if we were having a bank transfer, you'd have more data than just 1 month. And we'll add a little bit more data just so we could see that. And so that you might not have that clean cutoff, and then you could still use the reconciliation process to reconcile the items. So we're going to then upload this file. This is going to be in a CVS type format. Also note that as we save this, as I created this file, it's got some date issues over here. It shouldn't be 2017, it should be 2020. So that's some of the formatting issue that I had when I transferred over this information. So just note, I should be changing that to 2020. I'm actually going to upload it with these old dates, because I kind of want to show you how if we enter the dates in an improper way, we can fix it, both in terms of the reporting. We can go back into the report and adjust the date, and we can adjust the date in the data input field before we accept them into the financial statements. And this could be a useful thing if you want to try to think about, not so much for the credit cards, but for the bank statements, when you're trying to think about possibly when you wrote a check as opposed to when the check cleared. If you want to put in that timing difference, for example, if you wrote a check in April and it didn't clear until May, then you may want to say, hey, that check was written in April. You may want to pull those items into April if there is that kind of timing difference. And you can do that within the data input screen before you upload this transactions into the QuickBooks financial data software. So we will run into that problem in the future. So if that's something you're looking at here and being aware of, we will touch on it shortly. So if you remember the CVS, if you go to an Excel tab and you say Save As, Browse, and then look at the file types down below, you can save it as a CVS file here. All right, so I'm going to close this up. And we will provide, of course, these files for you, and then we'll upload this. So to do that, I'm going to go back to the QuickBooks. I'm going to go into the banking section. So we're in the banking section, and then we're going to go up top and go to the file upload. So let's go to the file upload. We're going to choose the first item, which is going to be the browse. We're going to pick this up from the computer. So I'm going to say browse. Then we're going to look for where it is. So here's all my stuff on there, and I'm looking for the credit card transactions. So credit card transactions, it's a CVS file, or CSV file, a CSV file. I'm going to select that item, double click on it. You can see it populating here. Then I'm going to say next, and it should pull that information over. We need to then create an account, or pick the account that we have set up. If we had not set up a credit card account, we can do so here, just like we looked at in the general ledger. We have one here that's going to be this credit card account. It should be a credit card type account. That's the key. So I'm going to go into that one, say next. At the bottom, we're doing our same kind of lineup. All this is doing is lining up the top column. If we look, I'm going to open up back up our Excel file, or the CSV file. We're just lining up the headers, date, description, and amount. So date, description, and amount. So we've got the date here is lining up to the date, and then we have the description to the description, column 2, and the amount to the amount, which is column 3. So date to date, description to description, and amount to amount. Same item here where we have both positive and negative numbers in one column. So we're going to keep that. We're then going to say next. Here it is populated, so we have our information. You can kind of double check this or browse through it to see if it looks appropriate. And this is when, of course, it's actually going to transfer into the system. So when I hit next, this is when it basically transfers in. It doesn't go all the way to the bookkeeping system even at this point, so we could delete them before they're actually added to our books even at this point. So I'm going to say next, and it says QuickBooks will import 9 transactions using the fields. Do you want to import? We're going to say yes, please, and we're going to import this information. Next step, accept your transactions. Just like with the banking information, you're in control of how your bank info goes into QuickBooks. Transactions only show in your books after you receive and accept them. So we're going to say let's go. What they're saying here is, although you've included these transactions into the bank items, they have not been included in your statements yet. In other words, if we were going to go to the balance over here, balance sheet, and refresh it, we're going to close up the whole hamburger and scroll up to that 125. And then if we scroll down to the credit cards, we're still at that 1,000. No new transactions have been added yet, just like with the banking. And then if I go back to the first tab and close the hamburger, hold down control, let's get back down, let's take it to the 110. Now we have our 9 transactions, and we can go through our similar process here of allocating these transactions to the proper expense accounts and importing them or including them or adding them, as QuickBooks would call it, to our financial data.